Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. So for today I am using some Tim Holtz mini stencils, mini layering stencils. I also have these like Sea Life Thinlit colorized dies that I got a little while ago. So I know technically we're in summer, but this is actually a Halloween project. So I'm also going to use the Tiny Gift Box hats add-on and also the tag and book plates, Biggs extra large I think it is, die from Tim Holtz Alterations, that whole thing. so I have some this is regular cardstock, so this is just box standard stuff. It's kind of thick, so that's kind of helpful I think, but it's nothing, it's not a special, you know, colouring medium or paper or anything like that. It's just normal cardstock. And I've got some salvage patina and some vintage photo for the first one. I'm going to make 3 tags because why not? And I love making tags for things like this, and I seem to do 3 at a time, which is actually a lot of work, so I'm not entirely sure why I do that, but for videos. but I do like, I think also because I've got like loads of dies and things that I like to get a lot of use out of, so it's nice to experiment and play with those different things, which is the whole point of buying them in the first place. so I'm just using the like Tim Holtz mini round ink blending tool and a foam pad, and just randomly putting the colour on. I thought these 2 colours together look nice. They just work. It's got that vintage grungy kind of vibe, and I try to do that with all the colours, but I also try to use colours that are more Halloween themed. That makes sense. And yes, this is also I should have said this in the beginning, this is quite a long video, so you might want a cup of tea, but I hope this helps. I slowed this down. I'm doing a voiceover for the whole thing, so I'm hoping there's some tips I can give you as we go, and that you also get inspired by what we create today. So some of these products I've had for a little while as well, so not all of them are, in fact none of them are brand new, but you know, I've had them a while. So for the second one, I'm going to use the Villainous Potion, which is new to me, and Walnut Stain as the colour combo. And again, I'm going to do exactly the same thing. I'm just going to randomly put the colours on with a foam applicator. No rhyme or reason, just getting it on. So I've got a base colour or layer. And I think I said this in a previous video, that the whole thing for me is to get layers. So sometimes you think that, you know, something's not going right with a project, just keep going. Just dry in between layers if you're using wet mediums, and you'll get some very cool effects, and you'll get that really nice layered look, which is just the coolest thing. So again, just putting on some random colour in some random areas, and then dragging in the Villainous Potion there. I just thought these colours, I just thought they worked together. Browns and sort of shades of browns and some black and grey, you know, as added touches for Halloween, it just works. Along with things like, I like purples, I like the oranges, and some yellows and green. They're probably my go-to colours for Halloween, but you know, and red, of course. Red's for blood. So yeah, anyway, so for the third colour set, I've got Peeled Paint and Hickory Smoke, and these are all distressing, so these are not the oxide inks. The oxides would also give you a more chalky kind of, that's how I sort of see it, a more chalky kind of finish, but they would give you a different look, but you could do the same thing with those inks. The distress inks for me are quite more vibrant, I guess, because they don't have that slight chalkiness to them, because they're a different, like, they're made up differently. So these are more dye based, and the other the oxides are more of a mixture of pigment and dye. So you can, with both, you can do some very cool techniques. So, but the distressings tend to have a much brighter vibe to them, if that makes sense. Even though they're the same colours, they are a little different. So it's fun to play with both. So again, I just randomly put both colours on, and then went back and forth just to blend out a little bit. I'm not being too particular on any of these. This is Halloween, of course, so, and there's a song there. I'm not being particular because, yeah, we're just going to keep working with it. So a little bit of clean up on my mat. And now I'm going to bring in, so these are my 3 colours. And I had a rough idea of what colours were going with what images that I die cut and which mini stencil. So to get some colour, some texture in the background, I'm going to use 3 different distress texture pastes, and I'll show them as we go through them. I'll also show you in the end when we get there. So for this first one, I've got kind of like they look like, I guess, spooky branches maybe, and the tag from the tag book plate is the same size as the mini layering stencils, so I just layered it straight on top. That's not the idea with the layering stencils. The idea is to just add different depth and dimension and just extra, things all over in different places, which I do a little bit of that later on. You'll see that with some ink. But for the texture part, I wanted this just in the middle. It just made sense at the time. Now I'm looking at it, I'm thinking I could have done something else, but so it's not so uniform, because obviously the stencil also doesn't go to the edge, if that makes sense, of the tag underneath. But I make it work. So for the first one, I'm going to use some texture paste in the crackle, and then I have the matte and the translucent grit. So 3 different pastes to give you 3 different looks, but you're essentially doing the same thing. So for this first one, this is for the crackle, and I do love how this turned out. I do love this stuff. I need to drag it out more. Now I'm using this is like a little silicone type spatula thing. It was just a super cheap one offline, but it just felt like it took me forever to get this on here, because it's almost like the silicone head is too soft. So you'll see in the next 2 tags, I just used the palette knife that's to the right of me, to the right of the screen there. For some reason this just took forever. And also bearing in mind that it's distress ink that you're layering this onto, it will start to move the colour because it's wet. So distress ink will always react to moisture, so whether that's water or any other moisture. So of course the paste is wet, so it will react and pick up some of the colour. Now when it's drying, that is a very cool effect, because it kind of absorbs some of that colour and it comes through the paste, but not all of them do that. So this one didn't do it as much as the other 2, but the translucent grit paste especially, it made this very cool effect on the tape. So on the paste, and you'll see that it kind of made it the same color as the background. So again, it just gives you that extra bit of depth, I think, even though it's absorbed the color. So that's the crackle one, and obviously you need to let it dry. Now with the crackle one, the thinner the area, the more fine the cracks are going to be, and the chunkier or the thicker your paste, the more chunky those cracks are going to be. So it's a variety on that particular one. So you'll see when we look at it, there's big cracks and little cracks, but that's the nice thing about it. So for this next one, I'm using, I believe this is the regular texture paste, distress texture paste, and I used a normal palette, what I call a normal palette line knife, and that worked perfectly, and it was super quick to do as well. So just getting that one on there and cleaning off as I go. I have cut out all the bits where I'm cleaning the stencil in between, because otherwise you'll be here for a day and a half. So I've cleaned them in between each one. As I've finished one, I clean off the stencil straight away, otherwise the paste will dry on it, which you don't want. Another tip is to put just a little tray or something of warm soapy water, and just chuck them in there. If you're working on like more than one thing at a time, just chuck them in that tray, and then that way the paste won't dry, and then when you get ready to clean them, it's easy to clean as well. So this is the texture paste one. So this is translucent texture paste. Now I've got to say that the colour moved as I was putting this on, so just be aware of that, because you don't want to put the leftover paste of, say, this one back into the jar, because it will tint the colour that's in there, which is just a translucent colour, or a plain colour if you like. So I just kept moving it until I'd actually covered everything the way I wanted it, and then just wiped off the palette knife. But you can see it picked up that colour already. When it dries, like I say, it absorbs that colour, and actually all of them did that, but the texture paste, the one that's like the funky branches, that was probably the one that had the least effect of like absorbing that colour through the paste. But this one really went completely purple and brown. It was very cool. So I've got those three on there, and obviously the next thing is to let them dry, because there's no point putting all that lovely paste on and then and then just trying to work with it. So the first one is the crackle paste, just to recap. The next one was the matte texture paste, and then the third one is the translucent grit paste. So I thought I would just recap that for you guys, so it's a little easier to see which one I've used on what, seeing as I'm making three. So the next thing, and I'm going to speed this up quite a bit, is to put together all the colorize creatures. So I decided for one of them I'm going to have a walrus. I thought he made sense, and he's also the biggest one on there, although he's still quite dinky, but he's the biggest character. And the colorize is actually really easy. If you just take a like a guide from the packaging, you can, once you get your head around that side of it, like use that as a color guide, and then once you've put one or two together, honestly, it's really easy, really easy. And you can still use that packaging as a guide when it comes to putting the next one together, if you've got different colors, because sometimes my brain just goes, okay, it's in a different color now, does it work the same way? Of course it does, but my brain just doesn't always compute. So so the walrus is pretty much the same sort of colors. It made sense anyway for the tag, but just so you know, as an idea, just use the packaging as a guide. And you can do that for anything, anything where you've got dies. A lot of them will come with colored versions of that image, so it helps you know how to put that thing together. So got my little walrus going on here, and isn't he cute? I think it's so sweet. I love all these like colorized ones, because they're very cute animals, and I like cutesy stuff, but they're a bit grungy, I guess. Like, they're not that smooth lined. I don't know, there's just like, it's the way the art's been done behind it. It just works, and it's very what I would call very Tim Holtz. So it's got that funky vibe and that sort of grungy kind of thing. I don't know, maybe that's just in my head. So, but I just think he's so sweet. So what I also did around the edge of all the pieces, which obviously I didn't do on camera because again you'd be here for for a very long time, is I inked the edges with some, I can't remember if I used vintage photo or brushed corduroy, but a brown tone just around the edge of all of them. Some of them, obviously the darker pieces, you can't see that so much, but like on this little octopus, which I think is hysterical, you can see the nice sort of edges on there, even on the darker purple. And I used the color reference from the actual color guide on the on the packaging. The dolphin I didn't. The dolphin I decided to do it in greens because it kind of worked better with the whole Halloween theme. So I know this is a little bit different for a Halloween themed project, but I thought, why not? Why not? And when you die cut them, there it does make like little I suppose embossed or debossed areas, so you have an idea of where to put like the mouth and the nose, and not the nose, the eyes and the mouth. But again, I just referenced the packaging, and that made it really easy as well to see roughly where it went. If like I had some texture cardstock here, so it wasn't as easy to see those indents, like of those debossed areas of where the eyes and the mouth went. So I just kept referencing the packaging, and it made it really easy. A lot of it, in all fairness, is quite self-explanatory. My cat's at the door. When is he not? A lot of it is really easy and self-explanatory how to put together, because it's kind of like paper piecing, but not sort of thing. But it is really quite easy to put together. So I would practice on a few, and then if they turn out to, if they work out well, then just keep them and use them on different projects. But just play around with your scrap cardstock in different colours, and and just experiment and just play. So these pieces, most of the eyes and mouth pieces, I didn't ink because they were so tiny, and honestly you can't tell the difference. I mean, the walrus I think I did in black anyway, so you're not going to see that. But for the dolphin, I just felt like there are a couple of extra pieces. My cat. A couple of extra pieces that needed to go along the edge of his back, I guess, and also his mouth and eyes. And so I just inked that while it was still in the packaging. Not the packaging, sorry. The like where I die cut them. So I just inked them straight over that, and because it's distress and because it's Halloween, it didn't matter if I didn't ink them up as neatly as you might do it for another project. To me, Halloween and anything distress, the more messed up it looks, the better. Like, the more messy it is. So I didn't worry. But I love how as you start layering all these pieces, suddenly they just come to life, kind of thing. Like, you just suddenly see the face, and it's always when you put the face on that seems to suddenly make this image go wow. Well, I go wow, but do you know what I mean? Anyway, so suddenly he's got his mouth and his eye, and it just looks like a dolphin suddenly, if that made any sense. Anyway, so those are my little pieces there, my little creatures. And then I also decided to do some hats. So I'm using, this is the lawn fawn hat, add-on die. And I just thought the little witch's hat, I thought they could all be witches or wizards. And so I actually cut 3 more, because I will also add in, which I didn't show you at the beginning of the video because I hadn't planned this. I'm also going to bring in some, what are they? They are the Paper Dolls Halloween from Tim Holtz. And I found a few paper dolls in there. I kind of wanted to add that in there as well. So yeah, I love how these turned out, but yeah, it's probably not your conventional sort of thing for Halloween, or a tag, or even a distress thing to add sea creatures to it. But I think it's cool, and I'm hoping that you guys like this. I'm sorry if you can hear that in the background. That's my cat going mad at my door. My poor husband's trying to sort him out. So I've got those stuck down. I also, like I say, I did do 3 more so that we could have them on the paper dolls, but you'll see that in a bit. So this is the idea. I just thought they look kind of cute with these little hats on. So this is the crackle and how that's come out. And these are still drying, and there's the texture, and you can see some of the colours kind kind of coming through the paste, and especially on that grit paste one. So these still needed to dry, so I let them dry. And then while they were drying, I grabbed some Distress mica stains. These are from last year, I think. So I've got 3 of the colours there. I've got a purple, I can't remember the names of them, but a purple, a green and a brown, basically. And I've got some cheesecloth that I have like a, you know, just a pack that I bought of cheesecloth, and I just literally cut a sort of section. If you're a sewer, you know what I'm talking about. And then I literally just ripped it down the length of the piece of fabric, and it's created this like this piece. I don't know what to call this. I was going to say rope. It's not rope. It's cheesecloth, but this sort of fabricy tie, if you like. And so between adding the spray, the mica sprays, and spritzing some water, I'm just going to try and get that colour on there. This took a little while just because it's, you know, it needed more than I think I realised. So, and I wanted it quite dark. I didn't want it to be as pale, like with the cheesecloths showing through as much. I wanted to soak it as much as I could. But I wanted those colours in there as well. So I needed to get as much on there and, you know, so that I could cover that cheesecloth. So I just kept adding a bit of water, and there's loads of sparkle in there. Not sparkle, but like the mica powder has got this shimmery effect. So it's very cool, but it's very messy. Just saying. I officially look like the Scarlet Witch, and if you know what that is, then you know what I'm talking about. But my fingertips were just completely like inked. So once I was happy with the coverage that I had on it, I then used a heat tool just to very gently try and help dry it. I didn't do this completely because I actually didn't know how the heat would react with the fabric and all the ink, all the mica powder and mica stuff. The mica stuff should have been fine, but the distressed stains should have been fine. But I wasn't sure on the fabric if it was heat safe, if that makes sense. Like some of them just crinkle. So I did a very quick kind of drying off with the heat tool. So nothing too much, and then I just let it air dry. So there's the crackle coming out nicely on there. The texture paste, again, that absorbs some of that colour, and then the grit paste, couldn't think. So the next thing I wanted, I've had this funny fabric, I don't even know what it's called. This funny fabric, which I'll show you in a second. I'm going to add that as well. And it kind of looks like spider webs, sort of. I think I bought it at Hobbycraft like, I don't know, 10 years ago, and I've got a roll of it and it's just sat there, and I thought actually that would be nice texture in the background. So I will add that in when we get there. What I'm going to do now though is I'm going to take what's the thing called? A finger dauber thing. And, oh, my cat. And I'm going to just ink up the edges with some, I think this is either vintage photo or brushed corduroy. Any of the browns will work really nicely. I went for more of that kind of tone as opposed to like the walnut stain's quite a dark colour. So I wanted that sort of vintage vibe. And then I went straight over the top of some of the textures. I'm just going to let my cat in. Excuse me. Straight over the top with the textures. Come on in. And just around the edges so that I could get some extra vintage layering thing going on. Cat's in here, he's probably going to want to go out now. Sorry about all the racket. Anyway. So, with the next one, I took some black soot. And actually, when I put the black soot on it, I think that was the one that I actually preferred over the brown tones. Like I say, I think it was brushed corduroy or vintage photo or something. Didn't show up as much, so the black soot really had an impact. So that's why I say just keep adding layers, just keep trying things, and then you will eventually find one that works really nicely for you. cat. I can't do anything. Yes, you. Sorry, it's on my desk now. Anyway, sorry about all that. So again, taking the brush, black soot and putting it over around the edges and then over the top of some of the texture paste, just to give it a bit of just something else in the background. And then I'm going to spritz all of them with some water. Again, this is just adding another layer. Adding another layer and another bit of interest in the background. So I could have done this before I did the texture paste, but it still worked really nicely afterwards. And also adding that ink to the top of the texture paste means that reacts as well. So it was really nice. So I added some more water, and then I will just take that off with a towel. You can use a paper towel, but because of the texture paste, I found a microfiber was just a bit better. And then just very gently drying them off a little bit. Nothing too major. I kind of left them where they were for the most part. So what I want to do now is take, out of the 3 stencils that I was using, take the 2, how do I say this, the 2 that I didn't have as the texture paste one, so the other 2 designs that were not the one that I used for the texture paste, and just add them in with some black soot in the background. And believe me, this makes a big difference. Again, it's just layers. I'm just randomly shoving that on there, wherever, and it just works. So I used a blending brush for this just because it was easier going over the texture paste, because obviously it's raised, and just using that to go over the top with some black soot ink, which I think I said already. It was quicker and easier to do it that way. I think the foam, although I'm sure you can use the foam applicators, I was thinking that might have hooked a bit because of the foam over the texture paste and stuff, but you can use it. I just grabbed the brush instead. So again, going in with the 2 opposites, if you like, or the 2 that I hadn't used for the texture paste on each tag, and just mixing it up and adding them on, and just all the gaps and things. My cat, sorry, I'm laughing. My cat's on a mission today. Anybody who's got cats, you probably understand that. Backwards and forwards. Anyway, sorry, I'm distracted. Right, so last one, just getting that last bit of the sort of tree one on there. And it's amazing what it does. It does make a big difference. It does make a big difference. So adding those extra layers. So just finishing that off and then doing a little bit of cleanup. With the ink, it's much easier to get them clean, obviously, because they're just dressings. They'll just react with water. It comes off really easy, so don't worry about that. But I do sometimes find that I still get stains, but I don't worry about things like that. Life's too short. So just get a little bit of cleanup, which I could have cut out. I didn't need to leave that in the video, but nonetheless, like I said, this is a very long-winded video. And then what I want to do is take the trim, and I'm going to cut it into sections and then have an extra piece as just a little something to add in. So the first pieces will go into the top of the before I do that, I'm going to cut this funky looking orange trim stuff and get that cut in. So I'm going to pull this out, and this is the weird thing about this stuff. It kind of, you can manipulate it and pull it, and it's just weird. So So of course I love it. So I'm gonna just stick that down. I had some issues with my glue. When is that not an issue on my channel? I'm always having issues with my adhesive. Yeah, it kind of just, I thought I'd used the bigger bottle and it really just was, it made a bit of a mess. But anyway, wanted to get that stuck in place, and then I will grab, oh, I grabbed a different glue. I grabbed some Fabri-Tac, so that actually worked out much better in the end. And it's the one that I carried on with. But yeah, so I have these, I think these are like the ephemera pack, or they're not the layers pack, but they're the Halloween ephemera. I think it's ephemera, so they're like the more paper, the thinner paper ephemera from Tim Holtz. So this is the Halloween pack as well as you'll see a paper doll come in here in a minute. And just deciding, I know I'm slightly off camera here, just deciding where to put that little, it's kind of like a sentiment on a card, but it's not, it's just a word. So sometimes you just need one word for tags. I think this is so cool, and it just works. So I've got that word, which I think this one says curious, which is just stuck to the bottom, and then that's kind of like a base where I can then put my paper doll and my wool rust for this one onto it. So for this, I'm having I think I've got 2 girls and a boy, and it's like they're going to be holding on to the creature. So you'll see it'll make a bit more sense. So it's like they're holding their hand, well, not their hands, but you know what I mean. They're holding on to them in some way. So this is where I realized that glue was really just not good. And so I do eventually fix the glue issue, but for now I'm just getting the wool rust on, and then I will add, and I'm using some foam dots as well to add these 2 on. I just thought that'd be kind of fun just to add a bit of dimension, and that way if you needed to, you could tuck things behind them, or you know, you can still add to that. And once I have enough on there, I can then you know, add the next layer. I know what I'm trying to say. Too many distractions. Maybe I should redo this this part of the video. Yeah. Anyway, so layers. Lots and lots of layers. So you've got lots of layers in the background. You've got the texture paste. Got my little girl for this one with her wool rust. Wool rust? Yeah, it is a wool rust. And I'm just getting the hats on now, so that they can each have a little hat. I don't know why, I just thought this was kind of cute. And so I'm going to get the hats on, and then I will, you know, add some more of the trim. That's the word. I couldn't think of the word. So just getting the and what I do, I fold it in half, and then I put it through the hole from the front side, and then loop it back on itself, so it creates a natural kind of tie. And then with the extra piece, because I had a couple of smaller extra pieces, I'm using those to just tie 1, 2 or 3 knots in the actual piece, and that just adds a bit of something. So this one's just got 1 knot in it, and it's just a bit of extra texture. Texture and dimension and layers is just, for me, adds to projects like this. So just checking my foam dots, because I did, like I say, I had some issues with the foam and with the adhesive and making sure everything could stick. So I'm just making sure that that's going to stick down nicely, and then hopefully I'll be able to show you the other 2. So I did, essentially I'm doing the same thing for all 3 of these, but with different creatures and some different colours and some different, you know, textures and things in the background. So let's see how far I get with the rest of it without any interruptions again. So like I said, I had an idea of what I wanted on each one, and so for the octopus one, I've got the little girl, another little girl, and she's going to be holding one of his tentacles, and I've got, again, the same idea. I've got this funky orangey, looks like a spider web but not a spider web kind of stuff going on, which I've then adding in. I'm using the fabric track this time. Again, it worked much better. If I'd thought about it, I could have just used collage medium. That would have worked perfectly as well. And I'm just deciding where to put my octopus and the little girl in this one. Again, I'm using some foam tape, foam like adhesive. I thought that was kind of fun, just to give it a bit more dimension, even though there's lots of stuff going on cards or tags or cards, if you want to make these into cards. There's lots going on in the background, but it's just kind of fun to have you know, some extra's good. Like, I think with projects like this, you can't have enough, if that makes sense. Like, the more detail you put into things like this and add little things, even if it's a tiny little thing somewhere that somebody suddenly goes, oh, okay, I've seen that. I gotcha. It's just a bit more interest and makes it more fun to look at, and it's definitely more fun to make because you're spending more time on it. Now, obviously, if you're making tags like this, which I will show you now that I've done these because my camera died, you know, you don't have to make 3 in one go, so concentrate on one at a time. But this is my walrus and my first little girl, witchy girl, and my walrus, I'm imagining he's a boy. I don't know why, but and so that's the first tag. And then the second one with my octopus is, I think this is also this little girl with this boy octopus. I don't know why. Who knows? With toxic. And then I've got that knot at the bottom, that extra piece that had 2 knots that I sort of tied into it. And then the third one, I actually grabbed one of the boys, and he's with his boy dolphin. I don't know why the animals are boys, but anyway, or males, I should say. And the knotted piece is kind of like where his hand is on the right hand side there, and I just knotted 3 knots into it, just to, again, it's just different, so it makes them all a little bit different. They're all essentially the same thing, but they're all different. They're different colors, they're different characters, they're different images, there's just a little bit of something different on each of them. But this was so much fun to make, guys, and I really hope that you've lasted this long, because it is a very long video. I'm so sorry. These ones can't be short ones, but I hope you've enjoyed this. I'm definitely looking like the Scarlet Witch, and which is appropriate, and I will see you in the next one, guys. Happy Halloween. Bye.